We're good to go, Leo.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my colleague and friend, Larry Boing from Oregon National Lab. So as you see it there on the screen, in terms of his position, is the senior staff in the area of D&D, subject matter specialist, expert, and also D&D technical director at Oregon. So Larry has a long, bio that I very well aware of as working so many years with Larry, but he has over 42 years of experience in the nuclear facility decommissioning, as we also call it D&D. And he's really a recognized D&D professional, not just in the United States, but across the world. He has been at many different levels, working in D&D over the years. His international experience goes over 31 years, and working with international, entities such as the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, serving as a lecturer at numerous training courses, workshops, as a contributor and editor of the various technical reports that the IAEA produces, and also on expert technical missions, right, to the various countries that the IAEA works with. He also has other international activities besides the IAEA. He also has worked with the OECD, NEA, the Nuclear Energy Agency in France, Eastern European countries, which includes Romania, Latvia, and additional countries such as Argentina, Canada, China, Iraq, Japan, South Korea, Russia. So the country, his international experience has definitely, surpassed everybody that I know. So also since 1997, and most of you probably aware of this, he's been running the decommissioning topical training courses and fellowship events at, not just in the United States, but also internationally for numerous D&D professionals across the world and regulators. So recently he had been also involved in the other facets of D&D, such as knowledge management, which is an important aspect of it as well, as the workforce is retiring, and we have the new talent coming in. So transition of that knowledge is very important. So Larry been very engaged on that, specifically working with the Oak Ridge Associated Universities, ORAUD, in establishing a decommissioning certificate program. In 2021, Larry was presented with the 2021 Robert Long Training Excellence Award by the American Nuclear Society in recognition for his exceptional accomplishments and activities in the area of D&D, and most importantly, in the training aspect of that. And lastly, but not least, he's engaged in serving as a student poster judge every year at Waste Management. I am asking Larry to help out with this. So Larry is very kind and agreed to judge the student posters. But besides the student posters, he serves as technical session organizer, as chair for the various D&D sessions at the Waste Management Symposia, and also judging some of the posters at the related to D&D for the Waste Management Symposia. So with that introduction, Larry, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being part of the Tech Talks and sharing your immense experience in the area of D&D.
Thank you, Leo. Appreciate that introduction. A very, very eloquent description of an elegant description of what I've been involved in over all the years, and I like the last part of that especially. That's been kind of a new activity I've undertaken, as being involved as the student poster judge, and it's something I really, when I go to Waste Management, I always look forward to that. It's a great opportunity to mix and mingle with the students and see what some of the projects are they're working on. It's really been a lot of fun, and look forward to continuing that going forward. Well, like Leo mentioned, and Walter and I were talking about before Leo joined in on the call, this talk is maybe not so much a technical talk as it is what I think, as Leo mentioned in his opening remarks, a very important area, and that is the area of knowledge management, or what I like to call it more, knowledge sharing. We're at a point in the decommissioning world and the nuclear world as a whole probably as well, where we probably aren't doing enough. I know that's probably should be the statement of we aren't doing enough for sure, and we need to be doing more. So this is kind of the story of how did we get to the point of doing the kinds of activities we're doing with our program and the work we're doing and I'm doing here at the laboratory. How did we get to that point? What are some of the activities that we've been doing? What are some of the things that we are seeing? And so I call this decommissioning knowledge sharing in the 21st century. And that's the title of this talk. Can everybody see the slides okay? Walter, is
Yeah.
that turning out okay?
Yep. Yeah, I can see it just fine.
Okay. I'm going to try to turn my camera off here. Okay, and just keep rolling here. Couldn't have done that. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the outline of the presentation, we're going to go and have a look at, give you a little bit of background on kind of how did we get to where we discovered really that we really had more of a need for knowledge sharing at in the very beginning years of decommissioning, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. How did we do the work we did back then? Talk a little bit about some of that history. We'll talk a little bit about a history of some of the argon decommissioning programs and how we kind of evolved and rolled over into that the knowledge sharing area as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the courses that we're putting on, the facility decommissioning courses, periodically offering courses. And actually, what we're discovering in that area is that there's more and more of a demand and more of an interest in that very topic going forward. We'll talk a little bit, like Leo mentioned as well, about the decommissioning certification program, which has been underway for over 10 years now, and we've got a pretty good number of participants who've gone through that process. And then we'll wrap up talking a little bit about international fellowships and some of our other international activities and things that are going on in that area as well. So first, let's talk a little bit about the history and some of the resources of knowledge management, knowledge sharing. Okay, back in the early days of the decommissioning program and the activities of the programs and projects on decommissioning, the resources were often fairly limited. In the early days, we kind of evolved into starting up doing decommissioning as these old facilities became very much requiring a lot of maintenance and a lot of aging effects of sitting in the desert or sitting in not really maybe in the best care and keeping over the years, that they're no longer being used. And now all of a sudden we have this liability we have to deal with. Many of the early resources that we used to do decommissioning were really based on simple field experience. We're talking oxyacetylene torch cutting. We're talking scabbling devices and machines. We're talking other, believe it or not, scrub brushes, detergents, hot water, warm water, tools and wrecking balls, things like this that were all used in doing the early work in the early days of decommissioning. We had a very limited set of resources. We didn't have things like the decommissioning handbook. We didn't have things like other technical references that we could refer to. And simply having done the work meant a lot. If you had done it already, you probably were going to be called upon to join a team that had done that earlier work and doing the next project. Okay, that the staff needed the next project to be done would hunt down and search out and find some of these people who've done some of this kind of work before and bring them on board to help in the process. In the early days of the 70s to the 1990s, the 1970s to the 1990s, the early resources started to evolve, okay, into the 80s and into the 90s, mostly in the early 1990s, late 1980s. Places like RAPIC, that's the Remedial Action Program Information Center, was set up down in Oak Ridge. There was a gentleman, Park Owen, who ran that. That was one of the few places you could go and get any kind of project experience on doing decommissioning that was available through RAPIC and through PARC at ORNL. Personal recollections, again, people who have done this before. And we had a fairly light set, meaning very few, a few resources that started to develop. The IAEA started to do some of their first work in decommissioning. We had people talking about a decommissioning handbook being authored by some of the professionals in the field at the time. The folks up at NES up in Danbury, Connecticut, put that together. But all those resources were very thin. There really weren't a lot. There were a few things that you could refer to that had cost data in it, that had technical data in it, that talked about the different tools and technologies you might use. But we slowly started to see the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle starting to evolve. And then in the 1990s to the period of around 2020, that's when we really saw an explosion of different tools, references, resources that all became available as the work sped up at the Department of Energy and all of their sites, with the work going on at the Cold War plants that were closing, all the commercial work that was going on as well. We saw a lot of work and a lot of activity in coming to bear fruit of different resources, different references that people could refer to and people could use. And then we also had internet evolution over that period of time too, that helped a lot in giving us some resources again. The need rose up, as the slide title says on this slide. There was much, not so much maybe even a greater emphasis, but a greater need to place more resources, to have more resources available. More work needed to be done. There was more funding available. Therefore, there was more work that needed to be done. The work needed to be done faster, quicker, better, and cheaper as we went forward. So people were always looking for things to help with the back end of the fuel cycle that were really going to help accelerate and allow the accomplishments to be achieved. And also there being countries, kind of playing a little bit to the IAEA's work. A lot of developing countries were starting to experience some of their first activities in the decommissioning, or at least decommissioning-like activities. They may not necessarily be hard and fast decommissioning of large facilities or even smaller research reactors or things like this, but doing maintenance and improving on operations at certain facilities are very much decommissioning-like activities. So a lot of the smaller developing countries were interested in those topics. They had a need for those kinds of resources as well in running their programs. So as new graduates, as I mentioned earlier, new graduates and staff are now entering the D&D field. We've got a lot of people who are retiring, who are moving on to to enjoy their retirement years. And now we've got really a need for a lot of people coming into the field who are either new graduates and don't have a lot of experience yet in the workplace at all, or they're people transitioning to the decommissioning area. Again, they may not have a lot of experience in decommissioning. They may have a lot of operational experience, but maybe not a lot of decommissioning experience either. So a lot of them are looking for ways to gain that knowledge and to harvest that what other people have done before them, that they can learn for the work they're going to do. And again, we have a lot of developing countries, about 30 of those, according to the IAEA, that are nuclear fuel cycle activities. Most of those are commercial reactors, but also research reactors and other nuclear fuel cycle facilities. And one of the activities that IAEA has been working on is to find out what are the needs of a lot of these smaller developing countries that in the Middle East and in Asia as a whole, and South America as well. But there's a lot of need, and what do you need to run your programs more effectively? And one of the things that came back loud and clear was, hey, we want to know what the future is going to be like. So we need to get some formal training on decommissioning, waste management. These topics are very important for us as we are building our programs for commercial power generation, for research programs to enhance the abilities of our countries to perform and to build their economies. So along with that, with the agency's work and the European community's work, there's a lot of universities in some parts of the world that are now offering training or even advanced. Most of them are the universities, of course, are doing coursework, semester-long classes, or even year-long classes that deal with decommissioning, waste management, environmental remediation as well. The environmental remediation area is a little bit tougher to get your arms around because it doesn't have quite as much of the refinement and the years of experience that decommissioning has been through to this point. But that's an area that I think you'll see a lot of growth going forward, and a need for training and these advanced degree programs to talk about and to look at and to address environmental remediation. But we have a variety of international groups, like I mentioned, the IAEA, the EC. We have different corporate schools, and in France in particular is one that sticks out in my mind of the work that's done in France nationally by different corporations, by the French government, to assist people in understanding the process of decommissioning and becoming knowledgeable in that area. And in other specific countries, in particular South Korea, we mentioned France already, but Germany, the UK, Russia, and the US. Some universities are now starting up semester-long classes on decommissioning, ER, and the waste management topics. So this is kind of how we, as the experiences we've had here at the laboratory over the years, going back about 40 years roughly, I guess it's been, maybe a little bit more than that even. We saw that there was a real need. One of the things we could be a player in helping solve the problem of was this knowledge sharing and the information management part of decommissioning. So we dove into the D&D operations knowledge sharing, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more, is just give you some more background on some of that kind of activities that we've been doing here at our site. I mentioned we have about 40 years worth of D&D experience, roughly, and what we're here on this slide are some photos of some of that work going on at the site here in the upper left corner. This is up at CP5, one of the larger, more significant decommissioning projects is the CP5 research reactor D&D, where the large-scale demonstration project was done back in the late 1990s and the early 2000s till it was wrapped up. And hand in hand with that, they did the demolition to a greenfield of the CP5 site. And then there's just a few other photos here of some of the other activities, including glove box decommissioning, the old east area in the upper right corners, and photo of the a dust collection system from the old the HEPA filtration system from some of those old east area facilities. And then in the lower left corner is a photo of some cyclotron equipment after it had been segmented and removed from the cyclotron here on site, building 211. So these are some of the buildings that are on this list. These are the completed D&D projects at the site. And like I said, the number varies depending exactly on how you may count some of these. They may be one or two more or one or two less, okay, depending on exactly how you count the number of facilities. But it's roughly about probably 2 dozen roughly facilities that have been decommissioned going back about 3 years or so, roughly. Some of the ongoing work that we have is just that. It's ongoing right now as we speak. The intense pulse neutron source, which was deactivated back in 2009, they're actually doing some work there now, demolishing some of those old structures and old buildings there as a part of the D&D process. There's the alpha gamma hot cell facility, which was used to examine different experimental setups that came from mainly Argonne West, the old Argonne West site that's now part of INL, but they came from the old Argonne West site out of Idaho, came back here, and then they would dismantle them in alpha gamma. And deactivation is underway there right now. That's been a very long, involved process, and is getting close to being finished, but they've been working on that for a number of years now. And then there's a couple other areas, G Wing and K Wing. This is in building 205, the old Chem Tech building. division areas where there's a lot of glove boxes and other hot cells that are in that building. And then probably the king of them all is probably going to be the Building 200 M-Wing hot cells. There's a lot of transuranic waste that's probably going to come from that work. So there's a lot of interest in getting that work done to basically remove that liability, and for that matter, all these liabilities off of the book, so we can get the space available as greenfield and be able to use it for new R&D facilities. Also, there's some other operational maintenance activities that are underway, like the Advanced Photon Source has a big project going on right now. They're kind of getting ready to start that, and that will be to replace the beam line that goes around, that makes up the Advanced Photon Source, that the beam line is circulated through at that facility. That's not a decommissioning project, but it's a decommissioning-like activity. So some of those kinds of things will be going on and are going on routinely. There's also some other technology work going on, things like the argon supergel, and Young-Soo Park is here at the laboratories working on robotics, doing a lot of work in how robotics could be utilized in decommissioning activities. Here's just a couple pictures of some more of that work. This is there's nothing very exotic in some of this D&D work. Okay, it's all pretty much bring it in and knock it down once it's been cleared, surveyed for release, and then bring in the yellow iron and use the yellow iron to knock down and tear down the structures to again make the space available for reuse. So one of the things that we did from all that earlier work that we had done, and also from a lot of the international work and external to the DOE complex work we had done, was that knowledge sharing. We saw that there was a lot of people yet to come down the pike, so to speak, as the expression would be, that hadn't done decommissioning yet. So we saw that there's an opportunity here to not reinvent the wheel for all of them who are coming down that pike. Let's try to help them by sharing some of our experience with them, so that they can be smarter and hopefully do the job maybe more efficiently than what we were able to, because we didn't have that knowledge maybe going in to do the work that we were doing. So we focused on lessons learned and best practices, and then really what's the process about? What's the best flow for the process? What are the steps? What step should go before what other steps to kind of optimize the decommissioning process? We made a decision to use an integrated team. And what I mean when I say that is, it's not a team of just all argon decommissioning engineers or project specialists or project managers. We're going out and we're bringing in people who've done work at our site, at other DOE sites, at other commercial sites, even a few international sites for some of the presenters. But so we get a variety of viewpoints. We get Department of Energy sites, we get NRC regulated sites, we get other externally regulated and sites that aren't in that system, so to speak, of the U.S. regulatory system, and bring those experts in. And this is kind of a little bit of a weeding out process we use in this in some way, shapes, and forms. And what I mean when I say that is, the participants have to be willing to kind of share their experiences, what worked, what didn't work, what are things that will get you in trouble, some things that they might have gotten themselves involved in on some of their project work that they said, boy, if we were going to do this again, we'd do this different, and this is why. And share some of those lessons learned and best practices and experiences they had with others yet to go down that track. We use a variety of different formats. Sometimes we'll do a 3-day class. Sometimes it'll be a 3-day class with a 1-day site visit to a site in the area that's doing decommissioning related work. Normally when we go to Las Vegas and do our training, the tour there is of the old Nevada test site. We'll go out and do a visit and look at facilities that have been decommissioned, are in decommissioning. We look at the waste management facility there, and along the way, we'll stop and make other visits along the way and look at other interesting aspects of the site and the work that's gone on at that site in particular. But typically, it's a 3 to 4 day long training event that, again, doing knowledge sharing. People will pepper us with questions on which dismantling techniques work the best. What kind of decon technologies work the best? Which ones do we see used the most? Which ones? What kind of waste management technologies are utilized? Okay, and like we mentioned earlier in the introduction, I believe it was, we've been involved in the training part of this program for 25 years. Our first class was back in 1997. We had 12 Russian regulators, nuclear regulators, who came, and we did a workshop for them. That was kind of our start into decommissioning training. And we're now over 3,000 graduates from over 70 different countries that have been involved in the program. Like I said, the overall objective is to describe the process, share the D&D related resources that are available. Some of these might be web-based, but everybody knows if you do a web-based search, you can find 100,000 results. How do you wade through all those results or more? How do you go through all of those and find out which ones are best, which ones have the best information, the most concise information, which ones have the best references and backups to the information that's contained within them? We go through all of that. We give people web links. We give people, documents they can go and have a look at, and to get more details they really might need to plan their project or to estimate their project that's going to be coming up. We share project status reports on both domestic and international projects, and the work of international organizations like Leo mentioned in the intro, the IAEA and the OECD. They both have programs. The Nuclear Energy Agency of OECD has a program where they're doing this very kind of an activity. They're exchanging technical information with each other's countries, the developed countries. These are not developing countries. These are major Western, G20 sort of countries, sharing their experience with each other on what's worked and what's not working for them. So we share all of that with people who come to the classes. Like I mentioned, over 3,000 students from over 70 different countries. Very busy the last 10 years or so. We've had some years when we've had 150 to 200 students almost that have been through the program. Where have we been, or how do we pick where we go? Well, we kind of go to where the action is, I guess is the best way to describe it. So we try to get the locations that are in close proximity to Department of Energy sites, places like Augusta, Georgia, West Valley, New York, Washington, D.C. area. Even we'll do class.
Larry, did I lose you? Looks like you paused the connection. You there?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Sorry. Maybe it was just me. Sorry.
Do I need to do anything on my screen here?
No, yeah, I can.
Keep going. I think you just froze for a second.
Okay. I got to open my screen back up. I got to open back up here where I'm at. There we go. Is that okay? Okay.
Yep. All good.
One of the areas we've been working in quite a bit, actually, going back 7, 8 years now, maybe 10 years even, has been up in Canada with the folks at AECL and CNL now. We still get a lot of different people from the regulators up there, the CNSC, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, that come to the classes we do. And another area we're doing a lot of work with is over in Korea with the South Korean universities and the operators there at places like KERI, the Korean Atomic Energy Research Institute, and also, like I said, universities and some of the utilities there, the power plant operators as well. So photos of some of these different groups. There's nothing there that's probably anything that's very interesting to talk a lot about in a lot of detail. This is a photo of one of the IAEA groups. The IAEA puts on these periodic training events. I know Leo's been involved in several of these and hosted one down at FIU a few years ago now. This is kind of is a really good way to get a cross-pollination going on of people who have knowledge sharing and knowledge management needs, maybe in like an Eastern Europe region or maybe in Asia, where they can develop and kind of build their own internal to their part of the world network, be it Eastern Europe or Asia or South America or wherever it is. But a lot of really good fellowship and good technical camaraderie comes out of those sorts of events. Here's again a photo of, this is from in Korea, and this is in 2015, like the banner says, and it still is really a hot area in Korea right now. There's a lot of work, technology development work. There's a lot of work going on in, again, knowledge sharing, information sharing, what's worked and what hasn't worked. What are people in the U.S. doing? What are people in European countries doing? Is a very major focus of the work they're doing. Now, one thing that is worth pointing out is the government recently changed in Korea, in South Korea, and as opposed to being anti-nuclear like the previous president was, the newly elected president is very much pro-nuclear. So there's a lot of discussion and debate over, I say not really maybe much debate, but what's the path forward going to be as far as advanced nuclear, continued operating life for some of the commercial reactors that are currently operating there. In a lot of cases, they weren't looking at life extension. They were looking at shortening the period they could operate to 30 years with no life extension. And now the new government coming in may be more willing to look at life extension. So that's one that, if you want to follow what's going on in decommissioning, that's one to keep a close eye on, is what's happening in South Korea. So we talked a little bit about decommissioning training, and we talk a little bit here about the decommissioning certificate program. The decommissioning certificate program was started in about 10 years ago, roughly. ORAU and Argonne got together on this and basically came up with take two classes that are offered at ORAU, one by ORAU, one by Argonne, and then select one of three others, of which one is an Argonne class and the other two are ORAU classes. And then when you complete those, you are issued a decommissioning certificate. And basically what that certificate's intended to do is to give you a leg up, is the expression we would use, on the next D&D project that's coming along, or the new decommissioning program, or the new decommissioning team that's being formed, to kind of indicate that you've got a little more knowledge, at least I've been through the training at least, on what the process is about. Characterization, final status surveys, the RESRAD code and how it's used, and just in general, the decommissioning process. That's what the DCP was really intended to be. It's now going back a little bit over 10 years, actually about 12 years, it looks like. We're now at about 120 certificates that have been awarded through that program. Has been very well received by a lot of government people, federal government folks go through this program, and we get some other folks from, well, including the military, DOD as well, go through this program. We also have some other activities we call international fellowships. These are worked on mainly through IAEA. IAEA has some individual would like to make a visit, a fellowship visit, and learn more about the decommissioning process. We'll sit down with them for a period, anywhere from a period of 2 weeks to a month, kind of a detailed, intensive sort of a more prolonged training program, and work with them on understanding the process. If there's areas they want to focus on more or less, areas they don't want to focus on as much, we'll give more attention to certain areas and work with them on these different topics. But we get these typically from a lot of countries who are brand new into the decommissioning area. So countries like Iraq, who was fighting a war, with the Southwest Asian War going on, had a lot of facilities that were damaged, and at the end of that, had things they had to clean up, and a lot of sites they had to decommission in the end. So we worked with them. We've worked with the people from China. We've worked with people from Slovakia, South Korea, Latvia, and again, these are all anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months maybe for some of these staff members to come and be with us. Some different photos. These are some of the folks from Iraq, from the staff. From the most is the Ministry of Science and Technology. Okay, they're responsible for doing all the cleanup work that's going on at the different sites in Iraq. So we have a number of different visitors from there. And this happens to be this last photo here. This is a picture of Sheldon Lefkowitz, who's the owner of Pentec up in Coraopolis, Pennsylvania. They make scabbling equipment for concrete decontamination, for concrete surface decontamination, and they made a visit there. And Sheldon really did a nice job with the program. He set up a bunch of different equipment for them and demonstrated it to them in some clean facilities and demonstration areas he had arranged for close to their offices. We also did a lot of work with the Chinese on as they got ready to enter into their first significant decommissioning project. They've not really up until this point, they were here about, I guess, probably about 5 to 8 years ago now, somewhere in that window. They hadn't really undertaken any large-scale decommissioning operation. And this happened to be a group that was going to be working on one of their heavy water reactors that came here and worked with Dr. Charlie Yu in the background. On the left is Charlie and the ResRad code. They were very interested in ResRad code and how it could be utilized and how it was utilized in releasing sites. And this is one of Charlie's staff persons here in the front on the left. Can't recall her name exactly, so I'm not going to massacre it. But Charlie worked with, and a staff person worked with them for a week, gave them a really intensive course on the ResRad code. So summary, that's about what I had to share here today. We've had a wide scope of involvement in national, international decommissioning. Knowledge sharing is important, has been important, going back all the way back to the early days of decommissioning, and is still an important activity that we need to do. We need to do more of. We're not doing enough of it. We need to share the experiences, share the knowledge of practices, lessons learned, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Get on the track of getting more people qualified as technical experts and regulatory experts in the decommissioning area, and helping others understand the decommissioning process to assist in and again, building up that cadre of experts. I mentioned we're going to have a class at one of our decommissioning sessions coming up in Santa Fe here in about a month roughly. We've got other classes coming up. Denver, Colorado. We'll be going to Korea, doing a class there at Busan National University that we're working with there. The folks up at Bettis, I was working with one of the guys up there on the operations side. They're interested in potential of having a class there in September, so we're working with them on getting that resolved. Virginia Beach in October for the nuclear Navy folks. They always come to that class. And then back in Las Vegas the week before Thanksgiving, and we'll be back at Tuscany, which is where we always have our classes there. Contact information, if you need any details, have more questions, you need to refer back to something decommissioning related later after this talk. There's the website, the emails you can reach me at, cell phone, office phone. Please feel free to reach out to me. And that's all I've got. We're about 45 minutes into this. So Walter, I'll turn it back to you. I'll stop presenting, I guess, here.
Thank you, Larry.
Turn it back to you.
I hear a little feedback. Okay, we're good. Well, thank you for the presentation. And Leo might have some closing comments, but I want to, and there's some questions on the chat. There's one question from Jennifer. Her question was, is there a database used to share lessons learned? And I don't know if she wants to elaborate on that question, but that's what she typed.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there a specific database that you use at FIU? Is it the KMIT, or what is it specifically that you use to post a lot of these lessons learned so that we can go in and search and find them?
Well, I think the work, I know Leo was working with some of the students on taking the FCOG lessons learned, Leo. Remember, you guys did a lot of really good work on pulling those lessons learned together and putting those into, I'm not sure it's a database really. It's like a listing of lessons learned that FCOG had, and some were very specific to D&D. Others were specific to things like occupational safety, rigging and hoisting. They may not have been D&D, but they're things you need to be aware of and think about when you're doing D&D. I think those are useful things that I often go back and share those with people that come to our training courses. I say, there's a lot of hidden gems out there. I think that's one of those. There's that FCOG list that students were putting together. Yeah.
No, you're right, Larry. So KMIT has it as part of one of the modules that we have in the system. I'm not sure if Walter, you want to share that on the screen or not, but yeah, the intention was exactly that. It was capturing the knowledge. So we linked up with the FCUP group way back. This was I forget, about at least 6 years ago, if not more. And the other thing was also the connecting the students, right, the young generation with some of the people at the site that have that knowledge, whether it was reports or tacit knowledge, right, before they walk out the door. We're trying to capture that knowledge and put it part of the system KMIT. So that worked very well when FCAP was really active. I know that have died down a little bit, but I think that was a good approach. We were able to capture a good number of lessons learned, some of them in the area in D&D, health and safety, but those were important, and I think we should do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say another thing that I'm a little bit, I probably have a little bit of a cheat in on this, but one of the things I often do, and in fact, it's on my to-do list here on my board, is I go back to headquarters in DOE, and there are often these and they're not occurrence reports, but they're like like a project management lessons learned that I subscribe to, and I get periodically, maybe on a weekly basis, I'll get a number of different things that have been posted through that system of experiences on decommissioning projects or other sites. There's a lot of experiences on EM sites, okay, because they're doing a lot of work, of course. And there's a lot of good lessons learned that you can extract from some of those. You'll get the problem, solution, lesson learned kind of a format. And I use those as I can and where I can to draw down key lessons learned that, not to get too detailed in that list, but I will draw those down and use those to populate. I always have what I call this top 10 list, things you need to know about as you go into decommissioning. And if you don't do if you aren't thinking about these 10 points, one of these will catch you and trip you up, or more of them will. And I always kind of use that and determine, okay, which one of my 10, or is it a new one? It might be a new one, who knows? But which and where and how does it fit into that rack up of those top 10? Is it which one of the 10 does it fit in under, or is it a new one? That's been handy for me over the years look at and to work through, helping people through that process.
Does anyone has any other questions for Larry?
Just to add to what Larry already said, the other good source of lessons learned, I think they're the green books. If you remember, Larry,
Yeah.
as part of the large-scale demonstration deployment
Yes.
projects between 95 and 2002, 2003. So there's a complete list of those green books, about 200 of them. And again, those were specific projects done at a facility where it was Fernald, Mount, I think we did some at Rocky Flats, CP5 at Oregon. I'm sorry, at CP5 at Oregon, and
Yeah,
C-reactor at Hanford. Yeah. So there's a lot of those that, in a sense, those are lessons learned because I have a little bit of how it was done, how much it cost, and those dates, dollars, I guess, and some of the challenges that people face during that decommissioning. So those are also good source, and those are also part of KMIT. I think we have a complete list of those green books there.
Well, that's one of the things in my class that I really emphasize to people is that, there's a lot of resources out there for you, but you need to have them bookmarked in your system, and you need to periodically go and have a look at those and determine where they are, what's changed, has anything changed here, is the location the same? Another good one that might be of interest for all of you, Leo, and you may be aware of this one already, you probably are, is this ideas catalog.
Yeah, from the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, from the UK. That's a very good system they have. This gentleman, Dr. Ian Seed, has a program that he works on. It's a very interesting program too. Get ideas of what technology could people look at and might be able to be utilized for decommissioning and other EM activities.
So this is a totally different topic from what we had the last time. We were doing machine learning, and now we're doing a lot of more of your knowledge and what he'd be able to gather your years of experience. So we do appreciate a lot of your on-site experience that you have, Larry. But I want to give the opportunity to anybody else who might have a question for you. On that note, I do want to say that our next Tech Talk is on July 19. We'll be sending information about that. I put a link on the chat to sign up for a newsletter, so you can stay tuned, and you usually get a notification about the upcoming Tech Talk. So, and there's also let me put that again, the link to the feedback form. Please fill out the feedback form because it gives us information about what topics to pursue next, and we can share with, that's why we look at different speakers. In this case, there was interest in D&D, and that's why we reach out to Larry for his knowledge. So we appreciate that feedback if you fill out the information. Leo, or Himanshu, or Jennifer, any final comments and before we close?
Jennifer, if you want to go first, then that'll be fine.
I appreciate the discussion, and I do appreciate that you're also considering tacit knowledge, that information that's not documented anywhere, how we're also looking to share that as well. That's huge. So I appreciate that effort as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. No, thank you, Larry. We appreciate your support of Tech Talks and also sharing all your experience. So hope to see you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, Leo.
All right, guys, this will conclude our Tech Talk. Like I said, this information and the recording of this session will be posted on the website, on the Tech Talk website, which the link is have been provided throughout the chat. I'll post it one more time. Thank you, Larry, for your participation. Thank you for your putting up with me. But I appreciate your patience. Thank you for all those who are attending. They're online. Appreciate your attendance. And I will see you next time, hopefully in July 19, our next Tech Talk. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Walter.